Got myself and Derek here, ready to go over the Week 6 games for you guys. And there were a lot of crazy ones looking back on them. Starting off with the Thursday night game, we had a pretty wild divisional matchup between the 49ers and the Seahawks, where the Niners were able to get the win on the road 36-24. They were favored by 3.5, and they easily achieved the over under 47.5 points. Um, I was wrong. I thought Geno Smith would outperform Brock Purdy in this one, and that absolutely did not happen. Brock Purdy was 18 for 28, 255 yards and three touchdowns. I apologize. One thing that we saw happen in this one was Jordan Mason get hurt earlier in this game in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has an AC joint injury. So we'll see how that it usually ends up being a multi-week injury. So we'll see how that goes in relation to McCaffrey and him coming back. But
Yeah.
we knew we knew the days for Jordan Mason were getting limited here down at the end, and now with the return of McCaffrey and this injury, it's looking a little more bleak. Isaac Guerendo stepped in his absence and ran the ball 10 times for 99 yards. A lot of that came on his 76-yard run at the very end of the game, right before Kyle Juszczyk ran it in. So I guess Guerendo, it looked like he got tripped up, but he actually slid, and Juszczyk said, "Thank you. I will take that right into the end zone."
Yeah.
And that was Juszczyk's lone carry that he took in for 6 yards and the touchdown. Debo, or I should add that Brock Purdy also ran the ball 4 times for 19 yards, and he did finish with 24.1 points. Guerendo finished with 9.9. Not that anybody was starting him, obviously, because no one saw Jordan Mason going down in this game. But Mason finished with 8.2 points before he went out, or actually with 9.2 because he did catch his, where he caught one of his two targets for 9 yards.
Yeah.
And then Grindo was not involved in the passing game. Debo had a 76-yard touchdown, which pretty much fueled his big fantasy day. Had 3 catches on 5 targets for 102 and that touchdown, giving him 20.7 points. So, as we said going into this game, it's not very often that Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk have big weeks all at the same time. Last week
Mm-hmm.
it was Ayuk and Kittle. This week it was Debo and Ayuk, or it was Debo and Kittle. I apologize. Kittle finishing with 5 catches on 6 targets for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns, giving him 22.8 fantasy points. And I mean, obviously said to start George Kittle. There's no reason you wouldn't start him. Had another great week, and he is the tight end one now after this week. So
Mm-hmm.
you drafted George Kittle. Good job for you. And then Jawan Jennings, limited involvement, had 4 or 5 targets, caught 3 of them for 27 yards, 5.7 points. Ayuk obviously talked about that as well. Didn't have too much involvement. Caught 2 of his 4 targets for 37 yards, 5.7 points also for him. So it was another tough day. You started Ayuk. A lot of people might have finally reached the point where they benched him last week, and then he goes off. They start him this week. He gives them that. So it's in a bit of a tough spot, but I think, where you drafted him, unless you can trade him for some good value, you're just kind of rolling with him.
Yeah. It's been really rough with Ayuk though. He's been last week against Arizona was his only even, and he had a great week, but his only double-digit performance
No, I
on
know.
the season. So when we're talking, it's starting to get. He was getting drafted late fourth, very early fifth, and he's giving you single digits, 5 out of 6
No,
games.
definitely. But I think this trend is going to continue where it's going to be one
Yeah.
of those things where if you're going to bench him one week and he's going to go off and then you put him in, and he's going to be one of those, I think, inconsistent plays that you have to take the good with the bad or you have to trade him away
Yeah.
because there's no point in letting him rot on your bench while at the same time, I mean, you know what you're going to get some weeks. You're going to get this, especially on that Niners offense. So,
Yeah.
just that being said, I mean, if that's not the game that you want to play, and understandably so, it's the same thing. We're gonna have a conversation with another really prominent player later on down the road here, but That's how I feel about Ayuk right now. I did say not to start, that I wasn't comfortable starting the Niners kicker. He did come in, hit all three of his field goals and extra points. So he got 13 fantasy points. I mean,
Did you see he got hurt too? He hurt
that's incredible.
he hurt his
So,
shoulder. They said he's gonna be good for week 7 in case you were wanting to play him against the Chiefs. But yeah, he did get hurt making a
yeah,
tackle.
nonetheless, that is incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and then
Yeah.
yeah, Brock Purdy finished, he's currently sitting at the QB5 on the week. So,
Yeah. No, he had a very good week. And Gino, I mean, no, Gino had a very, I'd say a little bit of a below average week. He threw the ball 52 times. He completed 30 of them. He had 312 yards, but he only had one touchdown. He threw 2 interceptions, giving him 14.5 just about. His pass catcher's DK. And again, I have DK in a couple leagues. I'm not fully going to throw blame on Gino. There was for sure some bad passes from Gino that went DK's way, but there was also a couple, especially one early in the game that hit him in the chest and he dropped. So he had a bit of a poor week. 11 targets, only caught 3 of them for 48 yards, giving him 7.8. I think it's the first week DK is, other than maybe against Denver, where he's the low man of the 3 receivers. Lockett took advantage of his targets. He caught 4 of his 8 for 65 and the lone touchdown, giving him 16.5. And JSN caught 5 of his 9 for 53, giving him 10.3. Noah Fant was awkwardly involved in this one, more than we normally see. Again, he was open. He did take advantage. He caught all 6 of his for 63, giving him 12.3. I don't think many people were starting him. Shout out to Laviska Shenault, who fumbled a kickoff and lost it, and also returned one. So he finished with 4. I just thought that was hilarious. He did get it back, so good on him. Ken Walker had a good fantasy day on a very inefficient day as well, though. 14 carries for only 32 yards, but did see the end zone and caught all 8 of his targets for 37 yards. Gave him 20.9. So a very good day for him. And a day where, he didn't get it done on the ground. He still gave you not only an average, a good fantasy output on the week. Charbonnet, again, when Ken Walker's healthy, it's starting to seem like he's becoming less and less involved. He played 31% of the snaps. He carried it 5 times for 20 yards, caught his lone target for 15, giving him 4.5. So it was not a great week for him. If you did happen to start the kicker, Jason Myers gave you 6. And it just was not a great week. It was very unfortunate to see Jordan Mason go down. I did see a report he was at practice today in a non-contact jersey. They do have 10 days until Kansas City, so as someone that has him, I'm hopeful he can play, but I agree. Normally, a running back with a shoulder injury is not the greatest thing. Our London game. And I didn't think it would go exactly like this. I did have the Bears winning this game, but the Jaguars just looked terrible. They lost 16-35 to the Bears in London that very early game. Trevor Lawrence didn't look awful in it. He was 23 of 35 for 234 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, had an interception, carried it 4 times for 17, gave him 18 fantasy points. He's come to the point, though, where I just think there's 10 to 12 better options out there for you to start. So hopefully you're not having to start Trevor Lawrence. But if you did this week for bye or whatever the reason, not a bad week. Travis Etienne, man. He's got to go to the bench. Even if he plays next week, he's got to take a week off. He's got to go to your bench. We just can't trust this guy at this point. He carried it 3 times for -1 yard. Didn't catch his lone target before exiting with that hamstring injury. He played 18% of the snaps, giving you -0.1 fantasy points. The interesting thing was Tank Bigsby was the big waiver pickup coming into this week. And he got outsnapped by Dearness Johnson. Dearness Johnson saw 56% of the snaps. Now, Maybe Dearness Johnson's a bit of a better pass catcher. The Jaguars were down. That's how the game script went. But we did see Dearness Johnson out there 56% compared to Tank Bigsby's 27, which honestly was not expected. Neither of them were very involved. Dearness Johnson had 6 carries for 28, caught both his targets for 16, giving him 6.4. Tank had 7 carries for 24, giving him 2.4. It's worth bringing up both of those because if ETN is to miss next week, who you should start if you're going to start one of those two, I think we got to wait for our preview to see how it looks going through the week. I'd like to say it's going to be Tank Bigsby, but seeing Dearness out there that much did kind of worry me a bit for Tank's value going forward. The pass catchers, Gabe Davis was the leader for them, mainly because he caught both the touchdowns, but he caught 5 of his 8 targets for 45 in both those touchdowns, giving him 21.5. Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas were both pretty quiet. Christian Kirk caught 3 of his 6 for 39 yards, giving us 6.9. And Brian Thomas caught 3 of his 6 for 27, giving us 5.7. I did see a stat like unrealized fantasy points, and I should have taken a picture so I could reference, but I know Brian Thomas and also DK Metcalf had a very large amount of unrealized fantasy points that they could have gotten. So it was a down week. We know Jalen Johnson in the Bears secondary is good. We talked about it. And the receivers outside of Gabe Davis definitely felt that. Evan Ingram is back, and he is
he back?
he is him, and he was this guy for Trevor Lawrence last season, and it looks like it's going to continue to be that as he gets healthy. He only played 61% of the snaps. I assume that will ramp up to 70 and above, but he caught all 10 of his targets for 102 yards. He did lose a fumble, but he gave us 18.2. And I have to apologize because I said if you had Evan Ingram, maybe leave him out a week to monitor and see his involvement in this game. And if you had, you've been relying on guys like Zach Ertz or people like that to potentially leave them in. And then after putting out that episode, I did the exact opposite. I put in Evan Ingram because I'm like, if he's going to play, he's just someone that I feel like has to be in your lineup. I know he had a bad week 1 and then obviously got hurt, but he is back. Put him in your lineup. He does seem to be Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. We'll see going forward, but we know his involvement will be large for them. And outside of that, I mean, the defense did bad. The kicker gave us 4. The Jaguars are not good. They have looked very bad. I'm surprised Doug Peterson is still employed at this point.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. And I mean, the way this is turning out, the Jaguars are becoming a team that you really want to target in fantasy. So, I mean, it's obvious with your top running backs, receivers, and quarterbacks, but we're talking more like the dart throws, the spot starts when you're looking for a guy that you could just pick up off the waiver wire and start. The Jaguars are a team that you're kind of looking to play them against.
Yeah.
That being said, going to the Bears side of the ball, I said that I felt Caleb Williams was a very good start this week.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, as a matter of fact, turns out he was the quarterback 1 on the week.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, sometimes that's the thing about fantasy football. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. And I really felt strongly about how bad this Jaguars defense was. Caleb was coming off a really good game against the Panthers, who also have a bad defense, but we see opportunity there. And the Jaguars have just enough firepower on offense to kind of keep up and still force the offense to do something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really like the opportunity. Caleb went out 23 for 29, 226 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. Also ran the ball 4 times for 56 yards. So he finished with 30 fantasy points on the day. Absolutely incredible, something that you love to see. Going on bye in this coming week, but I mean, we'll get into talking about like Kyler Murray, and I looked at Kyler Murray's upcoming schedule, and it's pretty rough. And with Caleb going on the bye, I think he'd be an easy stash going into the week. Someone that,
Yeah.
I could kind of pivot to if I like the matchups more. But it's another discussion to be had probably in the waiver wire episode, all things considered. And getting on to the rest of the Bears, DeAndre Swift ran the ball 17 times for 91 yards and a touchdown. I believe he also lost a fumble. Let me check on that really quick. He did not lose he fumbled, but the
Yeah,
defense
they
did not
recovered
recover it.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he did not get charged for that. But I mean, another solid day out of DeAndre Swift. Also caught all four of his targets for 28 yards. So he finished with 21.9 fantasy points. I said, it's another good matchup. I'm staying in the flames with DeAndre Swift. He is getting the usage. I mean, I think he got 68% of the snaps.
Yep.
Yes, he did, which is good to see. And I mean, he got the touchdown. Roshan Johnson only got 5 carries for 8 yards. Not really, as much of a threat as we thought he might be. And then it got a little tricky getting into the pass catchers.
Yeah.
I mean, Cole Kmet, it was really tough seeing that all three of the really great wide receivers were going to be on the field. But as I said, in this tight end economy, I mean, what
Yeah.
choice do you have?
Yeah.
And if you kind of went that route and started him anyways, like, I mean, there was a league I still started him over Mark Andrews. Granted, we'll get to that, but Cole Kmet finished with 5 catches on 5 targets for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns,
Mm-hmm.
giving him 24 points. As you can imagine, definitely tight end one on the week. Only 1 point ahead of George Kittle, but still.
Yeah.
Great finish for him. And then next came Keenan Allen, who had 5 targets as well, which he caught 5 of for 41 and 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So 21.1 points for him. I mean, I said Caleb threw 4 touchdowns. There were the four right there.
Yep.
Wasn't too much left for the other pass catchers. Roma Dunze caught both of his targets for 40 yards, giving him 6 points. And DJ Moore caught 4 of his 5 targets for 20, also giving him 6.
Yeah.
The thing about this, pass this receiving core, all of them played. I mean, DJ Moore played 85% of the snaps, 80 and 80% for Keenan Allen and Roma Dunze. With all three of them healthy, it's going to be similar to the Niners,
Mm-hmm.
similar to the Packers. There will be some weeks where, like you saw on the Packers, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson, and Jaden Reed, all 8.
Yeah.
It's not going to be every week. And there's going to be I mean, some guys are going to get left out. And I think that's the thing. If you are playing one of these guys on a team that has multiple talented wide receivers, you either have to trade them or just stay in the flames, because leaving them on your bench every week or trying to decide, like, oh,
Yeah.
should I start them over? I mean, yeah, play the matchups, but it's going to be tough because some guys are going to get left out some weeks and you're going to miss out on all the good games if, you know, you're trying to play and find that one.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, I mean, Cairo Santos kicked 5 extra points and missed his lone field goal. And then the Bears defense actually had a pretty good showing. I believe they got 11 points, or let me check on that real quick. The Bears defense, as a matter of fact, scored 11 points. Yes.
They've been
So a good
solid.
showing for them. I mean, a good defense. If you have a good defense playing against the Jags, they are fairly turnover prone and they've been struggling. So something you definitely might want to look at.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's really all for that one. Unless you had anything to add on the Bears.
No, I just know coming into these next couple weeks, obviously they have the bye, but the Bears do have a couple favorable matchups coming out of the bye. You know, they have Washington and then Arizona as their first 2 games. So, more to the point of Caleb, he should continue his
Uh,
hot streak coming out of the bye.
yeah, and I mean, I definitely think he's worth a roster spot, and he'll be free. Nobody's going to pay up for him going into the bye week. So
Yeah.
that's one you can kind of just let the waivers run. You probably don't even have to use a priority claim if you are running that. Like maybe throw $1 a fab. just
Yeah.
so you secure him. Something along those lines. Oh God, our next game. Um, could I say atrocious?
Yeah.
Is I don't even know the word for it, talking about the Cleveland Browns offense. Yet another game where Deshaun Watson was not able to eclipse 200 passing yards. Oh, by the way, the Eagles won 20-16. They were favored by 8.5, and the over/under was 42. Don't know why you would have taken the over in this game, but Deshaun Watson, 16 for 23, 168 yards. I saw a thing earlier today, excuse me, that Deshaun Watson is 0 for 25 on his last 25 third downs.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not good, and not nor has this Browns offense been. I think their only touchdown this game came from Ronnie McLeod on a blocked field goal, and other than that, it was Dustin Hopkins getting the other 9 points on field goal attempts.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can imagine, it was ugly. You had Pierre Strong rush the ball 8 times for 43 yards, 10 for 31 for Deontay Foreman, and Jerome Ford got hurt fairly early in this one. He only ran the ball twice. He is actually, I believe, week to week right now. Only
Yeah.
played 7% of the snaps. So there's that. And I mean, with Nick Chubb coming back, it was kind of like Jordan Mason. It was coming to an end anyways, and this injury near the end just kind of solidifies it.
Yeah.
So, not really. I mean, 8.4 points out of Deshaun Watson, 7.8 out of Pierre Strong, 4.7. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, 9.8 out of Pierre Strong because he was also able to catch two of his three targets for 35 yards. Um, and he was tied for the second leading receiver in the receiving room. Jerry Jeudy caught one of his three passes for 35 yards, and Amari Cooper caught four of his six for 42. David Njoku, of course, added 5 catches on 7 targets, but for only 31 yards. Still 8.1 points out of your tight end coming off of that injury. Probably going to see better days from him, especially as he gets healthier and back into the offense.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get a whole bunch of targets. I mean, it's pretty much him and Amari Cooper. Hopefully, we see a little bit more if Nick Chubb comes back, but with Deshaun Watson out there playing quarterback, I mean, there's only so much you can hope for from this Browns offense. He has just been awful. I mean, there's not too much. The combination of him and the offensive line just doesn't offer much at all for fantasy or real
Yeah.
life football. I feel bad, honestly, for Browns fans because they didn't pay that quarterback. It's just bad. But enough with the Browns. Not too much more that needs to be said. I mean, the only startable assets right now are Amari Cooper and David Njoku.
Yeah, the one last thing that needs to be said is the top two scorer for the Browns fantasy wise was the kicker and the defense, and they were also the only two to get above 10 fantasy points.
Oh, you want to know what else is crazy?
10.
As a matter of fact, you said that. Talking about scores for the Browns, I believe Ronnie McLeod is tied for the lead in touchdowns for the Cleveland Browns through 6 games. Ronnie McLeod does not play on offense. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's been unbelievably bad. Again, especially against an Eagles defense that is known to not be the greatest of recent. But the Browns defense did do their best in this one. They only gave up 20 points. We actually saw solid fantasy days out of most of our Eagles. Jalen Hurts was 16 of 25 for 264 yards through 2 touchdowns. He carried it 14 times for 33 yards. Now, a majority of those were tush pushes to get a yard or two to get the first. We saw it successfully executed multiple times. He finished with 21.86, so a solid week for him. This was the most bottled up I'd seen Saquon Barkley be this entire season so far. He only got 47 yards on his 18 carries, and he only caught and was targeted twice out of the backfield for 7 yards. So he gave you 7.4. Now, that's an anomaly week. I don't think we'll see Too many times him only getting 47 yards on 18 carries, but a very good job by the Browns defense there. Kenneth Gainwell played 21% of snaps, 3 carries for 23 yards. We did see A.J. Brown return and immediately take over as that number one option. He caught 6 of his 9 targets for 116 yards and a touchdown, giving us 23.6. Devonta Smith got the other touchdown. Caught 3 of his 4 targets for 64, giving us 15.4. It was sad to see Dallas Goedert go down, and after only playing 5% of the snaps, he did get a hamstring injury and was out the rest of the game, something to heavily monitor going forward. But we did talk about, his involvement probably will decrease a bit with the return of Devonta and A.J. Brown. Grant Calcaterra stepped in for him and caught 4 passes for 67 yards, giving him 10.7. And of course, Jahan Dotson was out there as the wide receiver 3, caught 1 of his 3 targets for 10, carried it once for 13, giving us 3.3. And for whatever reason, Jake Elliott, I think he's a great kicker, but fantasy-wise, and we've had injuries before, he gave us 9 this week. It's just weird. The Eagles, mainly because if they're in a 3rd and short or even a 4th and short, they're going to tush push over settle for a field goal. Like, there's an extremely high chance of that. So his involvement just hasn't been the biggest. Now we'll see going forward, but the Eagles are just an easy fantasy team if you have pieces of. You obviously start the main guys, Jalen, Saquon, AJ, Devonta Smith, week in and week out, no matter what. We'll provide updates on Goedert as we get them, but, the guys we put out every week do not change for Philadelphia. I'm excited for this next game. It's the Bucs at the Saints. This game was insane.
Oh.
Especially the first half of this game was absolutely insane to watch. The Bucs ended up winning 51-27. But this game was chaos the whole way through. It really was. Baker Mayfield was all over the place, but he's a guy we talked about, you have to start him. I finally made the decision. I benched Jordan Love, even though he did good. But Baker Mayfield did better. He's just been electric for them. He was 24 of 36, 325 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 3 carries for 29 yards, giving you 28.9. If that's not a prime Jameis Winston stat line, I don't know what is. The 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He was just slinging it. It didn't matter who it was going to. He was just chucking it. And it worked out a lot for them. Chris Godwin returned to peak Chris Godwin form. Caught 11 of his 13 targets, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns, 35.5. Have an absolute day. Mike Evans got a little banged up in this one. He still played 57% of snaps, but you could tell it did affect him. He caught the very first pass of the game, and then after that only caught 1 more. So he finished with 2 catches for 34 yards with 6 targets, 5.4. And as we say, Mike Evans and the Saints, more times than not, it ends around what we saw there. But the Bucs got the win. Mike Evans is a guy that's in your lineup every week. Sterling Shepard was decently involved, caught 3 of his 4 targets for 23, carried it 4 times for 31, giving us 8.4. K. Dotton had a touchdown as well. Caught 2 of his 6. What?
Don't look now, but Dalton Kincaid just broke double digits.
My girlfriend just won her fantasy game. She'll be very happy about that. She has been riding the flame of Kincaid as you have.
Congratulations. We don't give up, Jess. We don't give up.
You can't. You just can't. It'll come. It has to. So I'm glad to hear that. K. Dotton caught 2 of his 6 targets, 15 yards, a touchdown, 9.5. He's been decent, and 6 targets is decently involved. I cannot be mad at that. The running game. Rashad White was out. Bucky Irving did serve as the RB1. And of course, dude, just more chaos in that backfield. Both very successful games. Bucky was the guy that people were starting. 14 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. Caught both of his targets for 24, giving us 18.5. He played 64% of snaps. And Sean Tucker, out of absolutely nowhere, to be fair, went insane in this game. He only played 38% of snaps, and in that limited time, he saw 14 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown, caught all three of his targets for 56 yards, and another touchdown. 34.2 fantasy points. Now, we'll talk about it more going forward. If Rachaad White is healthy and returns this next week, the Bucks would be criminally insane to not keep Bucky and Sean Taylor, or Sean Tucker, sorry, for that matter, heavily involved. Because they, I'm so sorry.
R.I.P. Sean
I
Taylor.
know, the absolute legend himself, okay? There's a reason he was on the mind and not Sean Tucker, you know? Sean Taylor was the
Correct.
GOAT. But yeah, it's hard to imagine him not getting run going forward because he was so productive with what opportunity he saw. And outside of that, Chase McLaughlin got 9 fantasy points. And the defense, despite giving up 27 points, finished with 19. Just to give you an idea on the chaos in this one. So it was a good week for the Bucks. Everyone outside of Mike Evans, sadly.
Yeah. Um. Well, going over to the Saints side of the ball, Spencer Rattler. He threw the ball 40 times, completed 22 passes for 243 and a touchdown. Also had 2 interceptions. Ran the ball 4 times for 27 yards, and I believe he lost a fumble as well. 14.4 fantasy points for him. He was not able to do too much in the way of the passing game for most people. Foster Moreau caught both of his targets for 54 yards. Not that anyone was starting him, but people might have been starting Jawan Johnson, who caught all three of his targets for 48.
Yeah.
7.8 points from a tight end. As we know, that is not going to kill you most weeks.
Mm-hmm.
This week, if you are playing against Cole Kmet or George Kittle, chances are that was less helpful. But,
Yeah.
you know, you're not expecting those points out of Jawan Johnson. Now, Alvin Kamara was very inefficient on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
13 attempts for 40 yards, but he did score a touchdown. I believe he lost a fumble as well. Let me do a quick check on that. And he did not lose it. The Saints recovered it, but he finished with, of course, 17.4 points because he caught 5 of his 8 targets for 24 yards. So,
Yeah.
typical Alvin Kamara type of game. And if you started him, you loved it. He got you what you needed, a touchdown and 5 catches.
Yeah.
So there's that. Honestly, Chris Olave went out early in this one with a pretty awful concussion.
Yeah.
Had caught his lone target for 5 yards. Um, and then Bub Means was the next most involved guy who caught 5 of his 8 targets for 45 yards and a touchdown. So he had 15.5 points. And then Rashid Shaheed, I guess he ought to be mentioned because he had 7 targets, which he caught one of for 11 yards. But he returned a punt for a touchdown, so he got 8.3 points. And he
Ridiculous.
also ran 1 time for 2 yards.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's the Saints. I mean, it's rough, and this is what it's going to be for the next couple weeks because Derek Carr is going to be out. So
yeah.
um, definitely not expecting much from the pass catchers. Alvin Kamara is still good. That's yeah. So moving on to another honest to God blowout. But it's is it okay? I do have to ask that question. This is another stinker for Kyler Murray. Um, on the week, he finished behind. Let's see here. Where are you,
I
Kyler?
mean, he was QB 25.
Oh yeah,
So,
finished behind Aiden O'Connell, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Justin Herbert, Spencer Rattler, Geno Smith, Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, Aaron Rodgers, Drake May, and Bo Nix. So
I think the biggest cause for concern is these past 3 weeks. He played the Commanders, the Niners, and the Packers. He did good against the Niners. These were like positive matchups. His next four, he plays good secondaries: the Chargers, the
well, yeah,
Dolphins, the Bears, and then the Jets. So that's
yes,
the main concern.
all very tough games. My concern is that he's hit 20 points twice this year. I mean, of the 6 games played, we have 14, 28, 15, and I'm not adding I don't care. 15, 9.98, we could call that 10.
Yeah, yeah.
10, 25, and
12.
12 for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't even like, the only difference between him and Mahomes is like solidly giving you 15, whereas Kyler's dipping below that. I mean, getting closer to that 9.98 is just disgusting
Yeah.
against Washington. That one was horrible. But no, just my main concern, the ones like the really bad games, 1 attempt for 3 yards, 7 attempts for 14 yards. The 14s and 15s are salvageable, but the really bad games are the ones where he's not running much at all.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that we've seen 2 of these games within the first 6, we've seen, I mean, 2 great games where he finished as, let's see, uh,
I think the
I
QB
don't
one,
want
QB1 against the Rams and QB
yeah,
5 against the Niners. His highs
yeah.
are high.
The highs are high, but the lows have been extremely low. So
Yeah.
it's becoming a thing where it's like I'm looking at, some of these matchups a little bit more. If I want to pick up and stash Caleb and play him in certain, it's getting to that point because Kyler's not just an every week leave in. We're 6 weeks through.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I've been wanting to talk about because it's really been on my mind. I mean, having him, my team, just for an example, I mean, this week the team I played went absolutely ballistic. Didn't really have much of a chance, regardless of how Kyler performed. But it's just it kind of correlates the 2 weeks that Kyler did well, my team won, and the 2 weeks he's putting up well below average quarterback numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely affecting your team's ability to win at this point.
Yeah.
So, moving on beyond that, though, James Conner, I mean, I don't know if I didn't really watch
He got
much of this
hurt.
game. Yeah, because the Ravens were playing at the same time. Yeah, he only played 28% of the snaps because you saw a whole lot of Amari DiMercato and Trey Benson, at least it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
James Conner still got 7 carries before he went. And I mean, a lot of that is because the Cardinals were getting just whooped
Yeah.
early and often in this game. He got 7 carries for 24 yards before he went out. Also lost a fumble, but
Mm-hmm.
he caught 4 of his 5 targets for 22 yards. So he got 6.6 points before his exit. And I mean, Trey McBride had a great day,
Yep.
caught all 8 of his targets for 96 yards, giving him 17.6 points. Oh, yeah. Kyler was 22 for 32, 214 yards and a touchdown. Like I said, 7 attempts, 14 yards. Also lost a fumble. So 12 points for him. Um, yeah. And then Amari DiMercato caught 5 of his 7 targets for 39 yards, 11.4 points for him. Michael Wilson caught the lone touchdown for Kyler Murray. And seeing as, yes, Marvin Harrison was concussed in this one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, because I watched him walk off. Obviously, it wasn't to lower extremity, but it was early in this game before he was able to log a catch, which hurt lots of people, me included in places, you included, I know.
Yep.
Nothing that you want to see, obviously. I mean, hopefully it's not like the Malik Neighbors one where it kept him out for 2 weeks. Hopefully it's a week and he's back. but it's looking like we're not going to have him for the next game, making Michael Wilson a much better target. And if he's on the waiver wire, someone that you could definitely look at. Other than that, there really wasn't too much to be excited about for the Cardinals in this game, really at all. So,
Yeah, it's it's rough going forward. The Marv is just terrible. It is great to see Trey McBride. He was drafted right around the tight end 4, tight end 5, and he's currently the tight end 4, and he did miss a week. So he's right on par with where we took him. Do like to see that.
yeah.
The Packers side of the ball was definitely more exciting. Jordan Love had a great game in this one. 22 of 32, 258 yards, 4 touchdowns, did throw an interception, carried it 5 times for 13, giving us 26.6. A great week for him. And it's kind of weird. Like, Josh Jacobs is obviously heavily involved in this offense, but it does, I want to confirm. Yeah, it does seem like almost every touchdown, like Josh Jacobs has 1 touchdown on the year. Almost every touchdown the Packers score comes through the air, which is kind of crazy.
Aaron Rodgers just fumbled and the Bills recovered.
I need a Bills touchdown so bad. I need it so badly, even though I don't know if I'll get it. But Josh Jacobs, 18 carries for 62 yards, caught all 3 of his targets for 28, scoring 12 fantasy points.
It's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs has been decent. He's been nowhere near what we drafted. I think we're waiting for that breakout game from him. I just don't know if it's coming. I don't
A
know if
lot of
it's...
the touchdowns have been coming through the air.
Yeah, it's how the offense is built. Like, I don't know if it's going to change. Like, obviously he's going to finish with
not.
more.
I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things where you're getting kind of, you remember for a while it was like Amon-Ra would always get tackled on the 1.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like you see the 2 Romeo Doubs touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many times, like the percentage where the receiver goes out of bounds or gets tackled and they're at the 1, that's 2 touchdowns for Josh Jacobs. It's just kind of the way I'm at least encouraged with the volume he's getting and that he's getting 12 points without a touchdown. But the fact of the matter, the touchdown equity isn't there right now. But I think it'll just be some of those things because they go for a lot of big passes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of those are going to end up getting down on the 1, the 2.
Yeah.
And it'll be there for Josh Jacobs. It just hasn't been right now.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we're still in on Josh Jacobs moving forward. Emmanuel Wilson
They
is...
did rule it incomplete.
Of course. Emmanuel Wilson is still serving as the backup. 7 carries for 54 yards, caught 1 of his 2 targets for 19, giving him 8.3, not 18.3. Chris Brooks saw a little bit of run in this one in garbage time, 4 carries for 21. Jaden Reed, again, was electric in this one. Caught 6 passes on 6 targets, something I do like to see, but for only 28 yards and a touchdown, giving him 14.8. He did suffer an ankle injury. He only played 53% of the snaps. So it seems like he's fine, but they were also winning by a lot. They didn't really need him to push through it when potentially he could have, but he still gave us a serviceable week. Romeo Doubs, we talked about, he was suspended last week. I figured they were going to work him into, getting opportunities, and that's exactly what happened. He got 3 of his 4 targets for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns, giving him 19.9. Christian Watson was also healthy in this one. Caught 3 of his 4 targets for 68 yards and a touchdown, giving him 15.8. Dontavion Wicks did suffer that shoulder injury and did not return. He only played 14% of snaps, catching 1 of his 3 targets for 9 yards, 1.9. I don't want to say the Dontavion Wicks, little era he had is over, but potentially he's not going to serve as the wide receiver 2, per se.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, his window of opportunity to prove himself as like the wide receiver too, like he should be on the field. Like he
Mm-hmm.
had the opportunities, and granted, we talked about the fact that not all the drops were his fault, but a lot of the times, especially in the NFL, the ball hits you in the hands,
You got to catch it.
especially when the wide receiver room is that competitive. And, the game where you get hurt and you're falling off, Watson gets in the end zone, Dobbs gets in the end zone and looks great doing it twice. It it hurts a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, he was banged up in this one, obviously did not return. Bo Melton saw a bit of run, caught one of his two targets for 6, carried it twice for 27, 4.3. And Tucker Kraft not only was not involved in this one, he got outscored by the backup tight end. Obviously, that's not going to happen every week. I don't think it'll happen again. But it does show, Green Bay's another team. They have so many weapons. Plus Josh Jacobs in the backfield. So it's hard to imagine him being crazy involved every week, but it was a down one. Caught 2 of his 4 targets for 13. Carried it once for 2 yards, giving him 3.5. Obviously, there will be better weeks for him. The kicker, Narvison, gave us
They did
10.
a hide and sneak.
Of course they did. Like, why? Why wouldn't they? It's yeah. The Lions took a page from their book, I guess. I mean, that's for the next episode. But gosh, yeah. Narvison gave us 10. The defense gave us 12. It was a good week if you're a Green Bay fan, and a bad one if you are a Cardinal fan.
Hmm.
Our next game's got to be one of the most
Cardinals
gross.
got to be the weirdest team, man.
They are.
They're
Yeah. No, they're. Yeah. And our next one was the Colts going into Tennessee and beating the Titans 20-17. It was Joe Flacco again. Anthony Richardson was not healthy enough to play in this one. Joe Flacco cooled off a little bit, but we talked about the Titans having a really good secondary. And honestly, Joe Flacco got it done for one, his age, and two, playing on the road against a solid defense. Got the win. He was 22 of 38 for 189 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception, giving him one carry for a yard, giving him 14.66 fantasy points, a solid week. I didn't like the Joe Flacco start this week. I did make it in a league last week when I had to. It was just a tough one, but he did get it done for the pass catchers we would start. Trey Sermon, again, and this played into it. There was no Jonathan Taylor, so whatever help they could get on the run game to help with the pass game was not there in this one, at least from Trey Sermon. He carried it 18 times for 29 yards, no catches, no targets, giving him 2.9. He played 60% of snaps. Ty Goodson had 8 carries for 51 yards, caught 4 of his 5 targets for 14, giving him 10.5 on 39% of snaps. He obviously offers more out of the backfield. And until Jonathan Taylor returns, I do like him more than Trey Sermon, but I also assume Taylor will probably be back this coming week. Your guy, Michael Pittman, was out there playing injured back in everything. He was.
and did you? I mean, literally, I was like, okay, my process was right. Like, I didn't want to start him with the injured back. I felt like it's going to be affecting his game, and then he just gets the jump ball touchdown. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they were saying you were going to be out for weeks, and then you do that.
They put a needle in the back, and he's good to go, dude. He's good to go. But yeah, he was targeted 5 times. He caught 3 of them for 35 and that jump ball touchdown, giving him 12 and a half. Josh Downs, targets wise, with Joe Flacco, is the number 1 target. Targeted 9 times, caught 7 of them for 66 yards and a touchdown. Carried it once for a negative yard, giving him 19.5. Alec Pierce didn't catch any of his 4 targets, gave you a fat goose egg. Adonai Mitchell played 21% of snaps, caught 2 of his 4 targets for 9, giving us 2.9. Mo Alley Cox was decently involved, caught 4 4 catches for 41 yards, giving us 8.1. Matt Gay gave us 8 if you started him. I don't see why you would have, but he had a decent game. We'll see, because all of these stats and everything that their rhythm they're catching with Joe Flacco is going to go out the window when Anthony Richardson returns, and it's going to be back to instability through the air. So I don't know how much stock you can put into Josh Downs putting multiple good weeks together when it's going to be a complete different quarterback and different style of quarterback.
Rodgers just got picked off. Mike Williams fell. And yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, so that might be how that ends. And getting to the Titans side of the ball where things were pretty nasty outside of Tony Pollard. Will Levis was 16 for 27, 95 yards, 1 touchdown, and an interception. Also ran the ball 3 times for 15 yards, 8.3 points for Will Levis. Tony Pollard had a really good day, ran the ball 17 times for 93 yards and a touchdown. It was a 23-yard touchdown, really nice run at that. Also caught all 3 of his targets for -5 yards, so he finished with 17.8 fantasy points. I mean, you gotta love PPR.
Yeah.
One thing that kind of sucked was, just did a little 2-leg parlay. Took Alvin Kamara, the over on catches at 4.5. As we talked about earlier, he got 5 catches. And then the Colts are pretty bad in the
No.
secondary, especially against outside receivers.
No.
Took the over on Calvin Ridley receiving yards at 47.5.
I mean,
And he gets 8 targets.
his most of the season.
Yeah. Obviously, they were not all catchable targets. Him and Will Levis, the connection was clearly nowhere close to there.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get 1 grab. Had 1 rushing attempt for 9 yards, so he finished with 0.9 points, but was unable to corral any of the targets that were thrown his way, so he finished with that 0.9. Yeah. DeAndre Hopkins, though, finished with 54 yards on 4 catches, 6 targets for him, 9.4 points. Tyler Boyd caught all three of his targets for 19 yards. Treylon Burks got his sole target for 10. So pretty ugly day out of Tennessee. Unable to do much at all against a pretty bad Colts defense. So outside of Tony Pollard going forward with them, it's really difficult to gauge what I'm doing with Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, they're going to be near impossible to trade.
The one thing with D-Hop, I mean, he did play 71% of snaps. That's his first time. Even his highest before this was 46. So at least he is getting healthy. He does look healthy.
Which is great. It's just that this offense, the passing offense, looks so anemic that, I mean, against the Colts, you can only muster up 95 yards of passing. It's not.
Yeah, Will Levis.
And this is fresh off a bye as well. So it's just not giving me much confidence at all.
At home.
To say the very least, yes, at home.
Gosh.
To add
Yeah.
fuel to the fire. The next game, we saw a real, ass kicking in Foxborough. The Houston Texans, without Nico Collins, absolutely dismantled the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
They were getting practically whatever they wanted. I mean, CJ Stroud did throw an interception, but he was 20 for 31, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns, though, with that interception. Also ran the ball 3 times for 7 yards. Says here he's logged for a fumble, but let's get a quick check on that. And that he did not lose.
Yeah.
So 19.4 points out of CJ Stroud. Pretty good day. And Joe Mixon. I said, if he is returning to play, I'm starting Joe Mixon. I mean, we saw it's nothing but greatness for whoever is. I mean, Joe Mixon is just so much better than whoever else is in that backfield.
Yeah.
And he made that clear. 13 attempts, 102 yards, and a touchdown, the long of 59. Also caught two of his three passes for 30 yards and another touchdown, 27.2 points for Joe Mixon. I mean, like, it was just easy. He was right back in your lineup if he was playing. He finished as the, let's take a look
On
at
such
this.
limited snaps, too.
Yes.
Like,
Currently sitting at the RB2 on the week if Brees Hall is unable to get another 4 points. So obviously a great week out of him. More greatness to come out of Joe Mixon, I believe. Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell both had great days in the absence of Nico Collins. Stephon had 7 targets, caught 6 of them for 77 yards and a touchdown, giving him 19.7. Tank Dell had 9 targets, caught 7 of them for 57 and a touchdown, giving him 18.7. Um, I mean, it was just good to see that in the
yeah.
absence of the number one wide receiver in the league, that the two obviously very talented options behind him were able to step up and keep this thing rolling like there was no issue at all.
Yeah.
Patriots do have a pretty good defense. They were able to put up 41 points on them. While, I mean, Drake May's first start, but it was still saw some good things out of him. So, um, moving forward, still rolling with Joe Mixon every single week. I think CJ Stroud you're rolling with them. Might be a little bit more matchup dependent. Just, finished. It's just hard when you see multiple weeks of Bo Nix putting up in the 20s because he's running around, and you got Justin Fields putting up multiple 20-point. So I think CJ Stroud is, I hate to say it, but a bit kind of like I was saying with Kyler, a bit of a matchup dependent streaming option. You're not going to drop him, but you might want to roster another quarterback because some of the options might start becoming better at this point. And then, yeah, Tank and Nico, especially, or Tank and Stephon Diggs, in the absence of Nico, are incredible starts.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, I do believe, yeah, that's all I got. Oh,
Yeah.
Kamai Fairbairn added 11 points also.
Yeah. The Patriots side of the ball, I mean, it's gotten slightly more exciting because Drake May is obviously more capable of passing the ball than Jacoby Brissett. He came in and had a solid start. He was 20 of 33, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 5 carries for 38 yards, giving him 21.52. I'm not even going to begin the conversation of, I know he just put up 21.5. I'm not looking at Drake May as a matchup dependent or streaming. I'm not looking at that just yet. I just cannot consciously tell you, the viewer, to look at Drake May and the Patriots offense. Just yet, at least. Antonio Gibson without Ramondre Stevenson, he's not efficient as the lead back. He had a very rough game in this one. 13 carries for 19 yards, caught 3 of his 4 targets for 24, giving him 7.3. He played 48% of the snaps. JaMychal Hasty is still in the NFL and playing for the Patriots. He caught 3 of his, rushed it 3 times for 12 yards, caught 1 of his 2 targets for 9, giving him 3.1. Someone I am getting a little bit of interest in is Pop Douglas on the Patriots. He's appeared as the number 1 option last season, and he is also the number 1 option this season. So far, he caught 6 of his 9 targets for 92 yards and a touchdown, giving him 21.2. He played 62% of the snaps. Kayshon Boutte had an incredible touchdown from Drake May. I will say that was a dot from Drake May. He caught all 3 of his targets for 59 yards and a touchdown, giving him 14.9. Jalen Polk played 65% of snaps, caught 1 of his 4 targets, 1.4. Kendrick Bourne caught both his targets for 9, giving him 2.9. KJ Osborne, who they paid and brought in, didn't even play. What'd you pay him for? What'd you bring him? This is the thing with the Patriots. They bring in these mid receivers, and then they just disappear. KJ Osborne ain't even playing. Sorry, I had to let that one out. Like, it just makes no sense. Makes zero sense to me. And Hunter Henry had a solid week because he caught a touchdown. Caught 3 of his 5 targets for 41 and that touchdown, giving him 13.1. And I mean, that's really it. I mean, let's monitor Drake May. If you had him in a dynasty setting and you drafted him, you are very excited about what you saw here. But outside of that, in a redraft league, I'm going to need another performance before I even consider picking him up. We've just seen that offense look very lethargic, and until I see a couple solid performances. And also, just to kick Jacoby Brissett while he's down, Drake May threw more touchdowns in this game than Jacoby has on the season. Unbelievable. We've talked about it. Unbelievable. Our last game, the game of the week, the Commanders going into Baltimore and taking on the Ravens. This one lived up to the hype. The Ravens were able to get the win 30-23. It was a good one. The guys we wanted to perform for the Commanders did perform. Jaden Daniels was 24 of 35 for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did not throw an interception. Carried it 6 times for 22 yards, giving him just shy of 21 points. We did talk about Brian Robinson being out, so it was the Austin Eckler show. They didn't run it very much in this one, and it makes sense because Austin Eckler isn't an efficient runner. The Ravens do have a good run defense. He carried it 9 times for 21 yards, caught 4 of his 5 targets for 47, giving him 10.8. If you had to start him, not a terrible week. It's what you expect from Austin Eckler. You can't be mad at him for giving you, honestly, just what you expect. He played 80% of snaps. Jeremy McNichols played 37%. He was very uninvolved. 2 carries for 9 yards. Scary Terry is the guy. He's just been exploding of late. Caught 6 of his 7 targets for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. Carried it once for no yards. Gave him 23.3. And then, I mean, outside of that in the receiver room, like, we don't really look at anyone else. Like, De'Ami Brown had a solid day. Caught 4 of his 8.
Zach Ertz.
Yeah,
We do look for Zach Ertz, though.
The receiver room.
Yeah, they don't really have any other receivers.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said the receiver room. I was getting to my boy, old reliable Zach Ertz. I wouldn't slander him like that.
We don't look for Noah Brown.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 9.8. Olamide Zaccheaus got 6.7. We're not even considering these guys. I'm not going to read through all their stats. Zach Ertz was solid again. I said if you had to leave him in, leave him in. He did it again. Caught 4 of his 5 targets for 68, gave you 10.8. If you started Siebert, you thought it'd be high scoring. He gave you... I can't tell what my note says. I don't know if my note says 14 or 4.
Hold on, let me check David's team. He gave you...
I think it's 14.
14.
14. I didn't want to say 14 if it was 4, though. I was like, it's a big difference. But he gave you 14, another solid week for him. Obviously, you weren't starting the defense. Go ahead, Schiff. The Ravens, King Henry.
Oh, before that, I just wanted to mention if I seemed a little lost during the last, because I realized I completely forgot to mention the score of the Patriots-Texans game. It was 41-21. So in 2 of the leagues that both of us happen to be in, both our Dynasty League and our Bubble Bowl League, our secondary league, which still fairly competitive. We're all trying to win that Bubble Bowl League, but Dynasty especially. But so Dynasty, I was up by 4 points, just Keon Coleman playing. And in Bubble Bowl, I was up 145-142 against the Bills defense and Garrett Wilson. So I was watching the end of that game quite intently. Did end up winning both of them. So that it was just scary hours. Yeah, it was very distracted for a decent reason. 2 pretty important games. So Getting into the Ravens. Oh, it was a great week. This is kind of what I think everybody wanted to see, just in a sense of, can the Ravens get it done on all facets in offense on the offensive side of the ball?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is yes. Lamar was 20 for 26, 323 yards and a touchdown. Also had an interception that bounced off of Mark Andrews' hands. Funnily enough, both of the interceptions this year that he's thrown have hit the intended targets right in their hands. But so it goes in the game of football.
Yeah.
Anyways, Lamar also added 40 yards on 11 rushing attempts for 19.9 points. Pretty much right at that 20-point mark, which I'd like to consider a good day for a quarterback.
For sure.
Um, but like Derek said, we definitely got the King Henry show in this one.
Again.
He rushed the ball 24 times for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. Didn't add any catches, but he didn't need to because that's 25.2 fantasy points right there. So Derrick Henry continues to do. I mean, we said 15 touchdowns,
He's got
man.
9 through 6.
Derrick.
What's the running back? Isn't it LT? LT has the total? I think he has the high point. Keep going. I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah, but anyways, we saw him just completely own this on the ground because Zay Flowers actually did quite well in this game. This is back-to-back games of over 100 yards for Zay. 9 targets, 9 catches, 132 yards for Flowers. So that's 22.4 points for him. I think with the Ravens offense, honestly, you're playing Derrick Henry, you're playing Lamar Jackson. I think on any given week you can play Zay Flowers and just hope that the long ball connects or that, he ends up getting peppered with targets. But I think some of these other guys come into play, like you can really play Mark Andrews or you can play Rashad Bateman when it's going to be a game where the
Yeah.
Ravens are going to play a team that's going to score.
Yeah.
And granted that like the Bills game, that was kind of that one threw us for a loop. But
Yeah.
now that we're kind of starting to figure out who all these teams are, who the identity, the next time around against the Bengals, I'm comfortable starting the Ravens pass catchers because they are going to, both teams are going to have to score to keep up with each other. Neither have been able to figure out how to play defense through the first 6 weeks. So
Yeah.
it's teams like that, I'm kind of looking out. But it's good to see, though, because we don't have to completely just look past the Ravens pass catchers in fantasy,
Yeah.
especially, where Zay was drafted. But even Rashad Bateman has strung together some actually
Yeah. Decent weeks.
relevant
Startable
weeks. I
weeks.
mean, this week, 4 for 71. That's 11.1 points. I
Yeah.
mean, nothing amazing, but like I said, it's one of those where you look at the defense, you kind of just look at the matchup altogether, and he might be a good dart throw flex. Like,
Yeah.
a guy that we'll get into, Darius Slayton. It didn't end up amounting to much, but he was my dart throw of the week, ended up getting me double-digit points.
Yeah.
It's one of those. But yeah, like I said, Mark Andrews had his involvement in this one, caught 3 of his 4 targets for 66 and finally got in the end zone. His touchdown was really great to see. So he finished with 15.6 points. And then Isaiah Likely caught 2 of his 4 targets for 27 yards. And Justice Hill was not very involved in this one. 13 points out of Justin Tucker. And the way the snaps went in this one for the running back room, 63% for Derrick Henry and 38% for Justice Hill, which, you pretty much like to see. So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
will. I will add the LT touchdown. I do not think it is attainable. My fault. LT. It is 28 rushing touchdowns in a season.
Ooh.
When I looked that up, I was like, my fault. LT. My fault. I do not think that will ever be broken. Honestly, with how the game is going, changing to more passing, that is incredible. So, but Derrick Henry is on historic pace. He has to be on pace for his. I mean, he's had crazy seasons.
If he gets 2 every game and then has one game where he gets 3, he can. But that's to tie it.
Yeah, that's insane. And that's
And
with an extra game. That's with
I
an
know, I
extra
know, I
game.
know, I know. And I'm not saying that is. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that's what it would take.
Yeah,
He
Derrick Henry
would
has
have
been
for
insane this year, though.
at minimum 2 every game
Yeah.
for the remainder of the games, and one of those games he would have to score at least 3. So the likelihood of that is not very high, but the pace he's on right now, I mean,
Incredible.
down to the first 6 weeks, this is what the Ravens got him for. This is what I wanted to see. I mean, before this year's over, you guys will see me with a Derrick Henry jersey on one of these podcasts.
As you
So,
should. As you
and
should.
rightfully so. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we will be back tomorrow with the rest of the games, the waivers. I think some are getting pretty important, especially like, we talked
Yeah.
about rookies like Caleb getting later into the season, so on and so forth, things like that. But another week in the books. Hope it went well for you guys. I know it did not for Derek and I. Both of us are sitting at 2-4, and as the viewers might want to hear, we are facing each other. So
And you have no CD.
yeah, and the winner, and you have no DJ Moore. All right.
That hurts me less than CD hurts you.
Yeah, well, as of late, it hasn't been hurting me too
I know.
much.
I
As
know.
long as I have Malik, for the love of God. Anyways, we've
Yeah.
been struggling, as you guys can tell. The winner of this game will be 3-4, and the loser will be 2-5. So those are your first team fantasy co-hosts, folks.
Stop, dude. Stop.
uh,
Unfortunate, man. Unfortunate. I shouldn't have lost this
and,
week. How can
yeah,
I predict Marvin concussion, ETN -0.1, Jordan Mason going down in the first? I genuinely got
no,
screwed. I
yeah.
lost by like 5.
And I mean, that's the tough thing about fantasy. It's things like that. And
Yeah.
then, I lose Pacheco
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't had Malik. And like we talked about, Kyler Murray has had 2 really good weeks, and everything else outside of that has been
Things you just can't
average at best.
predict. Yeah, there's nothing you can do. Literally.
No, I mean, you plant your flag somewhere and you just hope it was the right piece of land. Sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
But with that, we are going to leave you guys. Hopefully, like we said, week 6 went better for you than it did for us. Going into week 7, and there's a lot of season left, guys. No
Yeah.
reason to just call it quits and give up. Keep pushing, keep trying to make trades to make your team better. There's a lot of season left. So, with that, we are actually going to leave you guys. So, Derek, if you have anything else to add.
No, we're good to go.
All right. As we say every time, thank you guys for the support. Couldn't do this without you. I mean, wouldn't really be a point. We'd just be talking to ourselves. So, like we say every single time, come back next time, take more ups with the first team.
Yes, sir.